Hello and welcome to the Hat Trick presented by the ICC. I'm Charlie Stolitano alongside Neil Barnett and Rocky Ray Hudson. Today we have part 2 of our look at the evolution of club preseason and the history of the ICC. If you missed part 1 or our conversations with Gareth Bale and Lothar Matthäus, head to internationalchampionscup.com or subscribe on iTunes or Spotify. And remember, you can hear Ray, Neil, and me every morning on the football show on Sirius XM FC. Rocky, how you doing today? Neil, how you guys doing? Talk to me, fellas.
Under the circumstances, pretty good. Jollying along. How are you, Neely?
Look, I've got to go straight to 2013 and when Charlie brought this brilliant preseason to
we have to say that
relevant sport and to the ICC, because I was in Las Vegas with Chelsea fans doing a little appearance for 4 or 5 days, getting a lot of hangovers, not losing a lot of money because I'm not a gambling man, with a couple of ex-Chelsea players, and we were just hanging out with these supporters. And then I flew from Vegas to see an ICC game for Sirius XM FC. I flew to Indianapolis, and Chelsea were playing in Indianapolis. And all I remember about Indy, Charlie, was going out the evening before the game with John Harkes for the local cuisine. Oh. And the local cuisine in Indianapolis was prawn cocktail. Now, prawn cocktail in England...
Shrimp, we call it shrimp cocktails here.
Shrimp cocktail.
Yes. Just for our fans who may not know, that's all.
Prawn cocktail in England is prawns with a kind of, not very nice to me, pink mayonnaise, bit false.
Oh, I love it.
Shrimp cocktail in Indianapolis is shrimps in grated, fresh horseradish.
Oh,
yes,
and we sat there and we ate these prawns and we kept getting this grated horseradish.
But there's also like a ketchup-y base to it, isn't it, or no?
In our mouths. I'm telling you that Harksy and I sat there for an hour crying our eyes out at each other as this horseradish went up our nostrils and out through our eyes. It was the most emotional time I've ever spent with them.
Emotional now? It's emotional. All right. But Rocky, I have to say, what you seem to like the pink sauce better than the red sauce.
I do, but it's
I knew it.
I can just the image of Hawksy and Neil crying each other. It's nice though, isn't it? Yeah, but it's just too strong. You want another one? Yeah, let's get another one.
Now this was a bigger tournament than we'd ever experienced in the preseason. So Charlie, what happened? Why did you go to relevant? Why did the ICC form?
Well, John Scheinman and I were together at Creative Artist Agency, and we had a wonderful gig there, I have to say. We had wonderful people we worked with, Doc O'Connor, Mike Levine, Howie Newchow, Paul Danforth, to name a few, just great guys. And they really let John and I have a lot of leeway with the International Champions Cup. But in the end, they were more I would say agents, and it wasn't something you could take a big risk on as an agent. You know, agents usually get commissions for working for their clients. But
this wasn't just CE wasn't just an agency either, Charlie. But these were big boys. You didn't go to CEA; they came to you. They were the biggest and the best.
They were the biggest and the best, and they still are in many ways. And but doing games wasn't their thing, if you will. And we did a couple of games in Miami, and there was a new owner, a guy named Stephen Ross, who I had no idea who this man was, in the sense that he was even new to the NFL. So he was a developer, and we brought a couple of games there. One, we brought the World Football Challenge. We ended up bringing, John Scheinman and I ended up bringing
we played there, Charlie. We played Chelsea Milan.
Milan. Chelsea versus AC Milan, and then we had Barcelona Chivas. I can't remember which one was first, but these two games were there. And I guess Stephen Ross said to one of his partners, a guy named Matt Higgins, "Who the hell's bringing these games over here?" And to be fair to Stephen Ross, who is just, I think, a genius, what he did was he said, he saw the changing face of Miami. Miami used to be transplanted New York and New Jersey folks from the Northeast, many Cubans who left, Cuba. And don't forget, these were all people that were boxing fans, horse racing fans, baseball fans from Cuba, right? They weren't
and a
soccer
lot of
fans.
retirees as well.
Exactly. And the other groups were retirees. They weren't really soccer fans.
Right.
But Miami, as you guys know, Ray, as you know better than anybody, has changed dramatically.
Yeah.
And he saw now there were Brazilians and Argentinians and Englishmen and Italians and every cup of Ecuadorians and everyone you could see.
Sure.
And you were filling up, at this point, they had a lot of different names for the stadium, but they were filling up what is now Hard Rock Stadium and beautifully renovated. They're filling it up with soccer teams. And so they weren't having the same success with the Miami Dolphins at that point. And so they said, you know what? Let's go get these guys. So Steve Ross and Matt Higgins sat down with us, and the original plan was to really have to bring games to Miami, if it will, to fill the stadium, and they were going to renovate it and et cetera, which they ended up doing. But it was almost the first day on the job. Steve Ross said, show up here tomorrow. We're going to go see a friend of mine. And for him, we got on his plane and we flew to Los Angeles. It was like an afternoon. We'll be back tonight. You don't need any clothes or anything to change. We'll be back tonight. So we went and met with Eric Shanks, who was then the youngest head of any
each way.
Yeah. Youngest, I guess, CEO of any major network. And this was Fox. I met with him and his folks out there. And Steve Ross said, I want a tournament. I want a global tournament. And we looked at him like, a tournament to Mr. Ross was really simple in the sense that it was like the NCAA tournaments we have here at basketball, like the NFL playoffs. You come, you play, you lose, you go home. And, we explained to him the subtlety of the reason we've had success with the World Football Challenge and Champions World Series is that teams trusted us. They believed in us. And John and I, with some great, great, great people, put together really a preseason for these guys. And that was the fundamental part of it that the managers loved. And so we said, Steve, we can do a tournament, but it can't be single elimination. I can't tell Jose Mourinho or Carlo Ancelotti or Sir Alex Ferguson, you come for one game, you lose, you go home. It's like, what are you, nuts? So we came up with this format the first year that we would all have, everyone would play 2 games everywhere else in the country. And then we'd all come down to Miami to have, if you will, the 7th place game, the 5th place game, the 3rd place game, and the final. Mm-hmm. And I remember doing this, and we had, we had some great teams. We also had some interesting teams. We had Everton and Valencia, which aren't your typical big giant teams, but then we had some of the biggest teams on the planet. And so with the Manchester Uniteds and the Chelseas of the world and Real Madrids, et cetera, and it really took off. And it was something that we never saw the fans react the way they did.
Exactly, which was leads me to this. So Steve Ross is this visionary, not a soccer guy, and you and John Shyman come together in this, and he comes up with this wonderful idea. Now, did you sense that Relevant Sports recognized the tribalism of these clubs that you were trying to attract? This is a different landscape to anything in the United States, and any sport that's given. The challenges of going to the likes of Inter Milan and AC Milan at the same time, and Juventus and Real Madrid, they're not easily convinced about anything, let alone taking the whole shebang over to the United States to play in a tournament. How the hell could you convince this to be ever expanded?
Well, I mean, that's a great question, Ray, and it's tricky because we had set the foundation for so many years with Champions World Series and with the World Football Challenge, but it had changed dramatically. It was a series of games for the most part. We had a couple of little smaller tournaments. We had one year where we had Jose, as we mentioned, with Inter Milan when they won the treble that year, and AC Milan, Club America, and Chelsea. But for the most part, they were series of games a lot of times because teams would say, I want to have 5 or 6 games during preseason. And other teams would say, I only want 2.
Right.
And so the key was, how do we convince them all that it has to be 3 games at a minimum? And that's something that really we convinced them because, Steve Ross was willing to sacrifice because you knew that the games were not going to be financially successful in Miami if you have 8 teams in Miami, because you have to have on these days basically triple headers, double headers, triple headers, and you can't charge enough for these games. And by the way, at this point, after teams have won and we seeded them, if you will, from for the first place game down to the 7th place game, right? That no one knew who was playing who. So you had to be willing to take a hit on it. Even the following year, when we had Liverpool play Manchester United in the final, we had to sell the final game in 2 days. No one knew the final was going to be Liverpool Manchester United, and you got thunderstorms, you got everything, and we had around 40,000 people in the building. And I remember Louis van Gaal saying to me, after I said, Mr. Van Gaal, I want to congratulate you on the tournament, on the trophy. And he said, we shall never come here again and play preseason. And I looked at him like, well, thank you. At least you won a nice trophy. But at any rate, the point I was making,
They were back next year, were they?
Typical
they
Van
were.
Gaal.
The point I was making is that, for years, we're trying to convince these guys, these managers, that this is good for their preseason. Now we have to work with them. So there are people like Jose that would say, I want 5 games. But we could do 3 within the tournament, right? And we had 2 outside the tournament. So there was different iterations. And one of the challenges that after the first year we did is we bought the TV rights from the companies, from the teams, and we bought the sponsor rights from the teams. So we basically created another level of, let's call it, for the tournament, that it was a standalone International Champions Cup. And this was, I think, a turning point because we sold the TV globally. So even the Derby, even the Clasico, Ray, we sell in Spain as the International Champions Cup. And to convince these teams that their sponsors have to sacrifice to come to this because we need to generate revenues to pay the teams. This was really a collective. And that's the hardest part, right? How do you convince these teams that are tribal, as you said so perfectly, that you need to act like Americans, if you will, when it comes to the NFL? NFL, they open their doors, and Mr. Ross will tell you, we all do what's best for the league as a business. And I heard him say this the other day, and it just fascinated me. He said, we're the most communist thing in America. They are. Yeah. But now you're trying to convince Real Madrid to share with, Manchester United, or worse yet, Manchester United to share with Liverpool. And so, or Real Madrid to share with Barcelona. It's not an easy thing. And to convince them that all their interests would be served if we could sell them, if you will, as a package. And if everyone knew this was going to be the biggest preseason tournament in the world. We're not making things up and saying it's the Champions League final, right? But we are saying it's a tournament that matters.
Well, fans, though, and what a response the fans from the early days of the ICC.
Well, I want to say something here, Rocky.
Sorry, Neil.
Really important.
Yeah.
It had changed. In my experience, it had changed. Back in 2007, one of the games that you put on, Charlie, was LA Galaxy against Chelsea, and it was David Beckham's debut for Galaxy. And when he came on, I experienced something in the football stadium I've never experienced before or since, and that was 28,000 people with their cameras all flashing at the same moment as he ran on the pitch. They were watching. It wasn't the tribal experience that Rocky's talking about. They weren't active participant fans. They were just they were like theatre goers. taking the moment that Beckham ran on the pitch. I
History.
wanted to turn around and scream at them all. It was an evening game. It was dark. I wanted to turn around and scream at them all. Don't you know, if you take a flash photograph from 50 yards away, 40 yards away from where the action's taking place, you're just going to get the person in front of you in the flash. You're not going to see what's going on. So now, 6 years on, I'm in Miami, and two things happened that really struck me. One was that when Cristiano Ronaldo played for Real Madrid, it was the intense tribal soccer fandom that I knew in Europe. Everybody just wanted a piece of Ronaldo. It wasn't enough to sit and take a flash photograph. Everyone wanted a piece of Ronaldo. And I think it was that year, was it, that someone ran on the pitch and he had a photograph taken with him?
And the kid was almost deported because he was a student. And I don't know I know that Cristiano and Mr. Ross and our organization, we interceded. Matt Higgins, I remember, we were like, how do we figure out how to save this kid? All he did was hug Cristiano. But, the police take these things seriously.
But the other thing... The other thing that happened was a game that AC Milan were playing, and because I was there reporting on it.
What year we're talking
this
about?
2013. I was there reporting on it, but it wasn't against Chelsea this time. And I just took 15 minutes out. Actually, you were there, Rocky. I was in the same room as you. We were broadcasting it. I took 15 minutes out to watch Balotelli, just watch him, and this is what the ICC, I keep saying, brings. It gives you the chance to see statements being made. And I watched Balotelli for 15 minutes and he didn't move a bloody inch. He was the laziest footballer I have ever seen. But when the ball came to him, explosion, flash, life. And then the ball went, death. And he just stood there. And I've got to admit, I turned against Balotelli that day in Miami. You cannot play like that. You cannot prepare for a season like that. And these are the things you learn in the ICC.
Charlie, when the fan reaction from the earlier days as well, what was the expansion on that regard with these ever improving tournaments each year, highlighted, of course, when Man United played against Real Madrid in Michigan Stadium. Great story there, of course, where the players were coming out. This is where they were taking it all in. They were still in the street clothes, tracksuits and stuff, and they're coming along. And these games were going around the world, and Paddy Crerand was doing an interview with a Man United player or somebody, and the Real Madrid players came in. The Real Madrid players came in, and when Cristiano Ronaldo saw Paddy, he stopped them all. He says, "Look, you know who that is? That's Paddy Crerand." Yeah. Now, a lot of the Real Madrid players didn't know. He says, no, you've got to meet him. You've got to meet this guy. This is a legend. And he brought them all over, and Paddy met them. That, for me, was one of the best stories to go. And what a day that was, Charlie. And it wasn't just the amount of people in the fans. I got tickets through you for a couple of my friends that went to that game. And they said the whole experience of the fans seeing these teams, Real Madrid and Manchester United, together, and the whole warmth of it, and the football was tremendous as well. The competition was hardened. These games, they knew they were in front of the eyes of the world, let alone 100,000. But everything as well.
109,000.
And I have to tell you guys how this happened. This was Ann Arbor, Michigan. If Steve Ross is basically the largest contributor to the University of Michigan. It's his school. It's his love. And
Go Blue.
Go Blue, right? Exactly. And my daughter is a senior there next year. And so, nice. She drank the Kool-Aid. It's like, everyone who goes there gets excited about it, So at any rate, he's like, we got to do a game at the Big House. And we're like, Steve, I know you know more than we do. I'm not going to say I don't, but it seems kind of odd to me. This is a little sleepy little college town. He says, trust me, our alumni are the craziest and most passionate in the world. Okay, you're the boss, right? We go there. I'm telling you, the first day, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 hours, we're realizing we're selling out. We had to stop at 99,000 tickets because we didn't even get out of the first day of the alumni group alone. 99,000 tickets. We had to stop. We literally had to say stop because we're going to sell out and no other fans are going to get a chance to go to the game. Well, I have to tell you, it was that game had a couple moments that were really interesting to me. One is how seriously not only the teams and the fans take this, but even the media. In Marca, they had a picture of the big house, and red was the predominant color. Now, there's all sorts of theories. Chevrolet gave away a bunch of red T-shirts and this and that or whatever it was. It seemed to me the crowd was pretty 50-50, maybe a tiny bit more Man United, but it wasn't extravagantly so. But when you took a picture, the aerial view of the stadium, which was incredible, it was all, it looked red. Marca took the picture and made it white. The whole building is white in the thing. And the the next day or whatever it was, this English papers come out with the true photo and the doctored photo to show that we were more Man United fans than, imagine this. This is, and everywhere I went, they would say, Michigan. The other fun thing about that game was this. Cristiano was not supposed to play. Before the game, Carlo Ancelotti said to the press, he will not play today. Because if you remember, he came back from the World Cup where he was injured.
Right.
And halfway through the game, I've never seen a stadium like this. And I've seen Clásicos and everything else, but there's never been a stadium like this. The entire stadium loved number 7. Okay? So every Man United fan had a Cristiano jersey on. And every Real Madrid fan had a Cristiano Ronaldo jersey on. Cristiano Ronaldo turned to Carlo and said, I have to go in. I have to go in. And he limps off the bench to play for 35, 40 minutes. So everyone says, these players don't care. He went to the manager and said, I have to play. Nice. And it was such a wonderful moment when he came on the field because unlike your David Beckham moment that you said so perfectly, Neil, and I was also at that game, unlike that moment, this was 110,000 people just saying to Cristiano, thank you.
Yeah.
It was really touching, I have to say.
There are some other developments and highlights that we have to go through. Let's go to Miami, and let's go to the first El Clasico outside of Spain.
Yeah, that was tremendous. And again, I have to tell you how that game came about. It was extraordinary. I was always trying to do the Clasico. We tried to do the guys at Liverpool, Billy Hogan, and these guys will tell you that we had the Old Firm game done. And when we went to finalize it and sign the contract, I think we had a signed contract. Celtic. Yeah, we got there and Rangers backed out because of police concerns and this and that. That game was going to be in Boston at Fenway Park. This is before Liverpool had bought, before the Fenway Group had bought Liverpool. So there's so many wonderful stories. We're always trying to do something a little different to bring out the passion in it. And basically, we have good relations with Barcelona and good relations with Real Madrid, and they're saying, but they're not going to play the Clasico. There's no way. So the beauty of having Steve Ross and Matt Higgins and the crew there at this time is the beauty of it is that they don't know better. They don't know that you're not allowed to do the Clasico. They don't get it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't understand, Charlie.
Yeah.
Just get it done. What do you mean? I'm a big guy. I'm a big shot. I own the Miami Dolphins. I'm an NFL owner. I'm the biggest contributor to Michigan. I don't want to say anything because I already said he's the genius, and he is. And he's like, Charlie, just get it done. So I basically set it up, and I say, Mr. Ross, we have to go there, and you have to prove to these guys that 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 you're going to make this like the Super Bowl. And I think that's the only way we have a shot at it. And I'll set it up for you, but you're the one that's got to bring it home. And to be fair, he was amazing. We got on this plane and we drove, listen to me. We flew to Madrid for breakfast. We leave at 8:00 at night from Teterboro, whatever it is. And we get there in Madrid for breakfast. And President Perez is kind enough to meet us there, and we're all excited to go to see if we could pull this off. I'm nervous, right? Because I'm translating, I'm sitting, and I have to sit next to President Perez because, and who knows what's going to come out from the other side. And our guys are great. They lay out. Tom Garfinkel's the CEO of the Dolphins. Matt Higgins, amazing, was there. We had David Tyler, another one of our colleagues, was there, and of course Steve Ross. So Steve is given the pitch that I'm going to make this like the Super Bowl. And, I'm thinking, geez, I bought it. I was like, wow, this is going to be like the Super Bowl. And Tom Garfinkel was, head of the Super Bowl committee for Miami because he's the CEO, and Matt Higgins is the vice chairman of the Dolphins at the time. And so, boy, it's a fantastic show. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, this is going to be amazing. President Perez holds my hand in these meetings sometimes, and he turns over and says, you want to do this? I'm like, please, 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 please. And he says, yes. So I said, okay, great. Now we have to go and meet with Barcelona. Same day, fly on the plane. Same day, we fly on the plane to Barcelona. And now we're going to have lunch in Barcelona. Luckily, they're crazy over there. We don't get there till 3:00. Lunch isn't even started till 4 o'clock. So we get there for lunch at 4:00. And we had already come in that Real Madrid is saying yes. So now this was a lunch with all the board members, and I have to say they were gentlemen. They're very nice. Steve, Mr. Ross gave his pitch again with Tom Garfinkel and Matt Higgins. Said it's fantastic, and they said yes. Now we're going to tell you something. We're staying in Barcelona that night because there's a little game the next day. The Clásico is the next day, right? So there's 2 seats in the Tribune of Honor. It's a small little tribune, and they're kind enough to say, Charlie, you go with Steve into the president's box. So now, before the game, Steve is saying to them, this is very, very American businessman, let's sign the agreement, let's do this. And I'm much more in the European mindset right now, which is, boss, we got a yes. You know what? Let's just get out of Dodge. Even if we don't go to the game, it's better, because we don't want one team to win 4-0. That's what we don't want. We just don't want anybody to win 4-0. I don't care who it is, because they will not play the game if one team wins 4. And so Steve's like, let's talk to him. I'm like, Steve, you don't understand. This is the Clásico. We can't go and disturb their pregame meal that they have together. This is a ritual that goes back 100 years, right? So we go to the game, and Barcelona's all over them. And I got to tell you, it looks like it's going to be one of those 4-0 games, and I'm sweating. I'm saying, oh my God, please, Lord, please stop. Stop. So they score only 1 goal, and I'm thinking, okay, it's not too bad. And the Barcelona people are really happy. You see their dower, the Real Madrid, boards dower in the box next to us, and we're sitting there. And I'll never forget, Ramos scores a head ball in the last minute.
Sergio Ramos, same story.
Sergio Ramos again, as you would think, Ray. And by the way, they missed Neymar and Suarez and Messi and company missed 3 or 4 sitters they could have had, And so it goes in. And I have to tell you, the happiest person in the building had to be me. And Mr. Ross turns to him, I'll never forget, and he says, That was good, right? I said, that was great. That was great. And after the game, it was like, okay, we're going to do the Classico. And that's how we got the Classico.
But when it came to be played, Neymar was fighting to get out of the club, and it was his last game, as it turned out, before he joined PSG, although it was obviously one of the first games of pre-season. But just tell us about how the tickets got sold for that game.
Well, you know, this was the highest grossing game, I think, in the history of soccer in the world. I think this is much more than a Champions League final or World Cup final. May not be now, but you know, I understand the Super Bowl was over $180 million in ticket sales. So I don't know, nowhere near something like that. But you know, you have to understand, and you guys understand this, but maybe some of the fans who are listening don't know this, is that, you know, if there's a Champions League game, they give 25,000 tickets to one side supporters, 25,000 tickets to the other, all reasonably priced, right? And it's becoming a little higher price, but, you know, they want fans to be able to go to the stadium and go to the game. In this case, we could, you know, we did a deal with the clubs, basically, like this would be a sharing moment. So it was in everyone's interest to maximize revenues. And what we did is we just put out some tickets at a high price to test it, and it kept selling and selling and selling. And you know, what we did is we did the secondary market ourselves, Neil and Ray. I mean, it's hard to, in typical games, you put a game on sale like Michigan, tickets get sold, and then people buy them on the secondary market. It used to be the black market. Now there's a business, right? We have StubHub and everything else that actually goes out, and they sell the tickets to people that want to buy them. And typically what happens in a lot of these games is that a broker will buy 1,000 tickets. Well, we didn't allow that. We allowed only fans could buy tickets, no more than 4 tickets. And so everyone had to have individual 4 tickets or less had to buy tickets. So
do you know what the breakdown was of fans between
I could tell you this is what I do know. 75% of the people were from outside of Florida.
Really?
We had people from Australia. We had people from Argentina, Brazil. I mean, not a couple of people, lots of people. From all over the world.
Surely the Spanish-speaking Miami community must have loved this.
Yeah, and it was, you know, there is a lot of different nationalities in Miami, and that's what captured it. It wasn't just Hispanic, you know, for the people in Miami, but it's people from Mexico, people from Argentina, people from Brazil, who literally flew up for the game. The beauty of Miami is you spend a weekend there, and it was, I mean, we had festivals, we had, you know, and you know, it's so funny. It's so funny how everything is. I knew it was a success when Danny Silman, who's now our CEO, was in charge of if you will, the stuff outside the game itself, and did just a magnificent job. Yeah. I mean, a crazy job. Did a fantastic concerts, everything. Yeah. We had a park. We had, I mean, you know, he showed he was working for us at this point, and the only thing we could do after that was make him the CEO because he did everything right. So we ended up at this event, and I remember a couple of funny moments. Like we asked Barcelona, "Could you come to the park?
That's
where
right.
we have that, and
I
just
was
show
there
up."
That day. I was there that day.
Can you
yeah.
just show up, because it'll be fun to have you guys, you know, wave to the fans at our soccer park, you know. And they're like, I don't know. Oh, they said, is Real Madrid going? And Real Madrid said, no, we don't go to these things, right? So we're like, so they have a guy, Francesco Calvo, that used to be at Juventus, but now he's at Barcelona at this point. By the way, now he's at Roma. But and so he said, wait a minute. So he wasn't part of the culture, right? So he said, wait a minute. Real Madrid doesn't want to go, so why don't we go? Because we'll own it. But the Catalan mentality was, well, if they're not going to go, we're not going to go. But he's saying, well, if Real Madrid's not going to go, this is great. We'll own the thing. There'll be, so, this is how funny things happen. And at this place, we had rented the park and had Legends games and everything. It was just magnificent. Danny did an incredible job.
It was
House
amazing.
of Soccer we have now. We call it House of Soccer. And this we called Casa Classico, which was my name.
And
you liked that, didn't you?
Beautiful. And Charlie was all right.
I knew I'd hit it. I knew I did it right when I got a call the morning before the game from the Real Madrid people saying, we are really, really, really upset because the entire facility is painted basically grana blue. The same day, maybe 10 minutes later, I get a call from Barcelona saying we're really, really, really upset because Casa Classico has white tents and it's all for Real Madrid. So I said, we got it right. They both hate me. So we ended up, it was remarkable. We had Mark Anthony at halftime. It was like a Super Bowl.
And it was rookie. It was a fantastic match.
It was a tremendous game. The fact that we saw the MSN together for the last time as well.
Yeah.
And everybody sensed that they were watching something very special at the time. And it was a cracking game of football. There was edge to it, was well refereed. There was thrills and spills at both ends. Barcelona were thrilling them. And Real Madrid, you knew they were never out of it because Barcelona didn't build on the lead. But just going back to the build up to the game, on the one, there was an incredible success. I even had my own booth in that park that Charlie's talking about, right on Bayfront.
Casa Classico, now House of Soccer.
And it was there must have been 5,000 people passed through just to get my autograph. That's because the association, of course, with La Liga, but I had a wonderful booth and a picture of me, and these people would come in with their children and their girlfriends, and it was incredible. Outside, there was all the music going on. There was the smell of football in the air. It was a festival, a true, like a Brazilian type of festival.
Yeah. And on the other side of the park, which you didn't see, Rocky, there was a booth for Neil, and there was not one person there except me. And I kept coming back and forth in the line and getting his autograph because he felt so bad. But I have to tell you guys one story about Neymar.
I was at home here in London watching it on television.
I must tell you this.
And it was electric on television.
I have to tell you, which was really interesting for me, was that when Barcelona first hit the shores, I met with President Bartomeu. And he said to me, we are not selling Neymar. Literally. This is when they first got here. By the time we were getting to the end of the tour, the week later, 10 days later, he came to me and said, Charlie, we have no choice. We're not going to be able to keep him. So literally in that time period, this got done. And I said, my experience has been that, the guy wouldn't play. Why would he play? Because he's basically already signed. What if he got hurt for PSG?
He's the best player on the pitch.
First minute of the game, remember, he gets kicked. He's lying on the ground basically. And I said, okay, he's going to take the opportunity to walk off the field and say, I tried.
Right.
He played for almost the entire game.
Yep.
And as you said, he was the best player on the field. It was really remarkable. I thought that he did that. And it was it was a real game.
It involved, Neil, just real quickly on that game as well, even though we were in the booth to cover the game, Joe Tollison and I, we were this was just an ambience. It was the total Latin passion coming out right throughout this stadium, because I've been to El Clasicos, I've been to the White House and Camp Nou, and the sense building up to the game was, and I'm not exaggerating here, it was that exciting that they were going to see the eternal enemies. This wasn't just going to be a put-on show. This was what Ross had seen in his vision, that This is going to make people want it. Now, pulling it together, Charlie, everybody, when we do the show on Sirius XM, the amount of callers that we get in thanking you, because these people realize you're not talking about pulling in regular exhibition games with the clubs, and you took them all over the world. This wasn't just a North American phenomenon. It went to China with problems. It went to Australia.
The only game we ever canceled ever in my history that I can
because of the
remember.
monsoon.
Well, yeah, but it was the field that was ruined, and it was supposed to be the first encounter when they were both in England for Jose and Pep Guardiola.
Oh,
I somehow convinced them
Manchester Derby
that the Manchester Derby was going to. These are things that are.
Was this in Shanghai?
Yeah, it's always a team effort, right? And you want to say, you did this, but it's a team effort. We're all
hang on. Just before we get on to this, Charlie, why did you go international?
Well, this was always Mr. Ross's dream, to be international. And really, after the first year, we had a deal in Australia, China, and it was fantastic. Singapore, we're still in Singapore today. I talk about Wembley, for example. We had Liverpool, Barcelona, or Liverpool really smashed Barcelona that day, and Barcelona had all their players. We felt that, the International Champions Cup should be more than just the U.S. and just more than North America. In reality, all these teams have their, I'm going to say the word, Neil, don't smash the TV in front of you, okay? Marketing people all want to be in Asia and want to be in the U.S. over time, right? And so the managers reluctantly accept this. So now my mission, our mission, all our missions are to make it so they can have, a good facility where they are. It's a challenge in some countries. In Singapore, beautiful hotels, beautiful fields. In Australia, magnificent, no problem. You go to China and a lot of countries that are still developing the game, you don't have training sites around. And in this particular case here, it rained for 10 days. Our group, headed by Patrick Murphy, did everything they could do. We had people hired to watch the field. Sometimes I think in China, they just make you hire them to watch the field. You couldn't do anything. They were in charge of the facility. And literally the day of the game, it had rained for 10 days, never before, but it was really, the field was dangerous and it was unplayable. Yeah. And we had to, for the safety of the players, we had to pull the plug on the game. At the end of the day, Neil, it's like you say all the time, it's for preparation. You don't need to get people.
Yeah, and I was there at the Liverpool-Barcelona game at Wembley, and as you've said, it was probably the biggest crowd Wembley has had since it's become the new Wembley.
Unquestionably. They wouldn't let us announce that, though, Neil. They wouldn't let us announce it because...
there was no segregation. And it was... Even I, hackneyed old journo that I am, enjoyed the 90,000 people singing You'll Never Walk Alone.
Yes, exactly.
But I want to bring up two other developments that aren't widely talked about. I talked about that first ICC game that I went to. This is having been to numerous games with before the ICC in preseason in 2013 in Indianapolis. Also that summer, previously, at the end of the 2012-13 season, I went to a game between Manchester City and Chelsea in St. Louis. Yes. You were taking games now to places that weren't having big football clubs visiting. And St. Louis, Miami, these are towns now that have MLS.
You could go back to Seattle, Toronto, Charlotte, Nashville, all places where we took games first.
How important
Atlanta,
has this been to the development of MLS acknowledgement and to soccer passion in these places?
I really think that it's one of the fundamental, let's say, events over the years that has helped soccer in this country. I think that, you go back to Ray's days, that was the spark real modern day spark, if you will. And then, you know, in the old NASL with Giorgio and Rodney and Tommy, and of course, not Tommy Smith, but Rocky Ray Hudson, to World Cup, then a Women's World Cup. And then I have to say, I really think that our tournaments over time, culminating in the International Champions Cup, have really, I mean, I'll tell you this right now, in simple terms, mayors call us and say, bring your game here because we want to show the commissioner and the folks on the board that we have football matches, that we can support soccer. I mean, hell, Yankee Stadium, we brought the first games there at Yankee Stadium, and they're hosting games. So, you know, you can go back to the old Champions World Series, or we were in Toronto and Montreal and places, that Seattle, that before they ever had, you know, MLS teams, they had our tournaments there. And I think that, you know, when I hear people say, it's the only thing that sort of gets under my skin a little bit. When I hear people say like, oh, it's not good for soccer. I mean, like, are you kidding me? That's like saying Rocky Ray Hudson's no good for soccer because he announces games and people are listening to him instead of going to an MLS game. It's the stupidest thing I ever heard. You know what I mean? It really is stupid. And I don't know why people buy into it, but I guess there's lots of crazy theories in this world. But I think that it's one of the things that has really helped soccer grow in this country and has been a direct help to MLS.
Yeah, I agree. I think, you know, it raises the, not just the acknowledgement of the game within this country, which has always fought against the tides, which has always battled against the winds. That part of it is when the exposure of teams of the world-class standards. Everybody knows Man United. Everybody knows Liverpool. I mean, my neighbours around this area, when the Classico game was going on, they were talking about the game. They were talking about Cristiano. They were talking about Messi. They were talking in ways that they hadn't talked before. And I'm not saying that that's going to be the answer to it all, but it certainly wasn't the other way. Of people saying, they shouldn't have this game over here, you know, just because MLS is here, we should have all of the rights to the game. It's football, and it's played by the best players on the entire planet, producing further emotion and everything that is linked to our game for a short amount of time. And they are left, these people that attend in their hundreds of thousands, left with memories that will never ever leave. And how can that hurt anything? How can that hurt? It cannot be anything but emboldening. And for me, the prism that I'm looking at, just a great festival of football for everybody to enjoy, from the kids to the mother and fathers, for that shirt that they have lived with for so long, the transients of Liverpool and Juventus, the Italians and the Spanish, all of these. I just wish you can bring Boca Juniors next time as well, Charlie. Then we'll be talking.
I brought them before, when they had a guy named Tevez.
Yeah, magic.
Charlie, the other development that we haven't discussed just very quickly is international matches.
Yeah. Playing abroad, or what are you saying?
No, I'm talking about international teams.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, national teams, you're saying. Yeah. No, absolutely. We did years ago when we first got to Mr. Ross's Relevant Sports. We created, John Scheinman and I and Matt Higgins, we entered an agreement with Pitch International to do all of Brazil's games in North America. And we have this, it's a 10-year deal. It's still going on now. And you know, the football calendar is so crazy. That's what's just nuts, is that we never even really announced it. It was like our first big flagship move. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we still have the rights to Brazil in North America, which is fascinating, because we've seen, you know, we bought it when Brazil was at a moment where they were down, and then they're up, and then they're down, and they're up. And it's fascinating to watch this sort of curve. And we've had some just fascinating, fantastic games down in Miami in particular. Yeah. And it's been, I have to say, it's what I started with. I started with national team games in the old days after World Cup. And it was almost in some ways coming full circle. But yeah, I think that the national team games are really more focused on the fervor and passion and national pride. So when you bring Colombia against Brazil, every Colombian comes out, and Pete's girlfriend, fiance, wife comes out and says, I want to be there at this game. And Pete, I'm not going to let you go alone because I know there's other Brazilian women and Colombian women there. Right. And so, but that's really a different type of what Rocky talked about was really you go to these games and you feel like you're really at
by the
game.
way, Pete's
really?
like you. Pete's like you when he goes to those games. He wants to score draw.
Yeah, exactly.
But
0-0.
the passing on of that, Charlie, especially when I went to these games for the kids, when I say kids, the teenagers, the young lads and lasses in their early 20s that haven't seen those shirts in real life and those geniuses inside of those shirts and what they have produced together. And the best part about it all, on top of that, is that it means something to these players. You can see it in the demonstration and the quality of the football that's played. They're not playing like, it's an exhibition, it's a friendly
It's not
game.
An exhibition game, it's pre-season.
Right.
It's pre-season. It's a dress rehearsal for the biggest show on earth.
Exactly.
And it's where you learn things. And I keep coming back time and again when people ask me about the ICC to Manchester United versus Real Madrid in 2018, and United have bought Fred from Shakhtar Donetsk for a lot of money, and it was clear that their midfield was going to be Fred, Matic, and Pogba. And Anders Herrera played that game. Ander Herrera, and he was the man of the match. He tore Madrid apart. He scored the opening goal. He made the second goal. And I was there when Herrera made the statement, "You cannot overlook me.
Exactly
I will be
right.
the first name on your team sheet in midfield."
Magic.
And that is
meaningful.
That is what the ICC is about. It's about statements from Balotelli saying, "I'm a waster," to Herrera saying, "I'm in your team."
Yeah. Charlie, big challenges ahead for everybody in football, for everybody in every walk of life. How do you see these challenges being overcome?
Well, I mean, there's lots of challenges. First, let's start with COVID. This is, we're an event company and fundamentally an event company. We become much, much more content driven now. We do a lot of our podcast, the Hat Trick podcast presented by the ICC, to our La Liga a joint venture, to many different things that we're doing. And it focuses on content and getting people and these brands out 24/7. But in the end, you want these games. And one of the challenges beyond COVID, which is the obvious challenge, you can't have all these people together at a stadium yet. But one of the challenges is also the calendar, right? And how do you get, every time you turn around, you have a Copa America, and you're like, well, wait a minute, somebody's got to tell these folks that it's on Comedy Ball, that it's every 4 years, not 4 times a year. This is crazy. And so we are, we're looking at ways that, we can have a true tournament, one that is, we're always trying to improve it. We're trying to make it so it's a tournament in a sense that there's a knockout stage, at least the semifinals and the finals. We've had conversations with the authorities, if you will, how we can make it more official. And that's where I think it's heading, because, we keep stretching the envelope or pushing the envelope, as they say. And, you can do the 110,000 people, then you could do the Classico. And then, this year we were going to do a series of high-level games. We're looking at huge games like the Classico and perhaps another Classico this year. We're looking at, they're already announcing it, bringing in a Juve Inter, bringing in more of a challenge series. And now that's probably where we're going to end up next year, because you have the Euros and all the other competitions, right? So we'll probably do more of that next year, more of a challenge cup, probably Italy against Spain type concept. And then I think the year after that, we're going to really try to make it more official and much more. And you've read about it, you heard about it, and we're in the process of trying to improve it and trying to make it better. But I think the only way you can do that is to make it more official if you can. And so that's going to mean teams are going to have to train a little bit earlier, probably in their home countries, come here with a couple exhibition matches under their belt and get ready to
friendlies,
play
preseason, dress rehearsals.
Yes, exactly. We'll do what we can do. We'll do what we can do. But you know, look, we've done a lot with the tournament. Danny Silman, our CEO, has done a great job. We now have a youth tournament, a women's tournament, boys and girls from all over the world. It's really, we've changed the structure, but you know, the men's ICC, which is really the highlight, we're looking always to make it bigger and better.
Well, can I just say, Rocky, to all our listeners, that obviously it has become so serious this preseason in comparison to how it used to be, how Rocky laid it out in the previous podcast, to how it used to be in his day and right up to the 90s. It's become so serious, the preparation, and so professional. But for the people following it, like Rocky, like me, and getting involved, it's work, it's hard work, but it's not quite as serious. So next time we're there, you come and find us, you buy us a drink, and we promise to drink it.